Like, even in spite of all the barriers, we still built what we had and better. We built that 3-4 times over. But every time we build something, it gets violently taken from us.
Or gentrified.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it gets it gets removed. And that's the part that really annoys me too. That's why I said you got to acknowledge historical context, bro. We ain't even talking about the fact that Cats is expecting a handout. We talking about the fact that we built it without the handout, and it was destroyed, like physically, with fire and bullets.
Yeah.
Like, with knives, like people murdered, blood spilled, businesses burned, literally.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Walk With You podcast. My name is Drew Muzan. Thank you guys for joining me. On today's episode, I got one of the legends of Charlotte in the house with me. I ain't gonna call you mayor, even though I said mayor.
Legends.
One of the legends. Dave has wings. Dave Butler, what's good with you?
What's going on, big dog?
Glad to have you back, man. He was actually, funny story about this. He was actually the first piece of content. This is our first interview ever. My first interview ever with Dave was actually the first piece of content that I shot for like this whole new wave of content I've been doing.
Word.
With Tapped In. So,
got you.
But yeah, before it was, one camera, it was iPad, I think. So we've upgraded since then.
As it should be, my brother. As it should be.
Yeah. But as you guys see from the title, we're gonna get into a little bit of a heavy, not heavy, but definitely a conversation that I think you guys want to tune into. First, I wanted to kind of get into like what you kind of do day to day, as far as because it's kind of lead the conversation. So if you could kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of work, so my 9 to 5, if you will, I work for a company called the Whitaker Group. We got 4 different store brands in the men's sneaker, fashion, and luxury space. APB, Social Status, Prosper, and I'm a Year. And for that company, I do community engagement, community development. I'm director of community initiatives. So I have like a team of 4 people, and we basically do what we can to make dope things happen around the country through our retail stores. So it's kind of using like retail as a platform to give back to the community. It's almost like what the new, or like what actual corporate social responsibility looks like actually being active in communities, like as opposed to like big corporations that just kind of cut checks. It's like, nah, we actively engaged in like programming and doing dope stuff and being a platform for places where we have retail stores. So I kind of lead that effort.
So how did you kind of get into like that space? Because that's an interesting space to be in.
It's not a straight up thing where it's like you can't really get no degree in that or nothing like that.
Right.
But no, I mean, I started with the Whitaker Group back in like, what is it? It's 2020. So I think it might have been 2017 or something like that. And I started actually on the e-commerce side. I was a product photographer. I built up the e-commerce team. And I left for a year to do some freelancing. And in the meantime, like before I left, we were talking about like, what it would look like for there to be like community stuff as a part of the company. So that was
an original initiative.
Yeah, no. So it's something that the owner's passionate about. Like if you listen to any of his interviews or anything like that, he's like super passionate about it because we Black owned,
right?
You know what I'm saying, owned by a Black man. So it's like. It's something, knowing the communities, like when you hear his story, you understand, why this perspective is like infused into the company. And, he just kind of saw the work that I was doing outside of work. You know what I'm saying? Like I would leave work and go to community meetings or leave work and like go to panel discussions and stuff like that. And then like my year off, that was the year I like curated like Welcome to Brook Hill and stuff at the GAN and all of that. But we were well in motion on putting together like what it would look like for that to be a part of the company. So when they were ready for it, he just called me and we was ready to rock and roll. So it was almost like the position was kind of like, I don't want to say created for me, but it was something where it was like, yo, like, this would be a dope thing to add to the company and we think we can support it. So, can you come back and run it? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So, it was one of those things where I came in, I put in like a bunch of like work, like I put in sweat equity. I treated my work I treated his company like it was my company when I first got there. You know what I mean? They was in the middle of scaling, went from like 7 to 8 stores to like, 12. Now we up to like, I think close to like 20 almost in like 15 cities across the country. So it's just one of those, just been, you go in and you do what you're supposed to do and you reap the benefits from it. So that's kind of how I got there, just putting in work.
So what kind of fuels your drive for like community work?
Well, really, bro, it's a byproduct of what's necessary for real. So like, it's not like I woke up like I'm going to be a community person. It was just like my experiences through college and, really just growing up and coming back home really like just struck a chord with me on like the things, like just not seeing the things that I was into represented across the city. And I wanted to understand why. But like, so I started to just go to places and ask questions and, people who were quote unquote whatever, I would just go and show up and just ask questions. And just trying to really just decode and figure out why I couldn't get my hands on what I wanted to get my hands on and why the things that I was into weren't supported and all that kind of stuff. And then my background in terms of, like I said, my time at school, being in student government, and going to a publicly funded institution, so having to be tapped into state politics to understand how my school was getting funded. On top of like, when you the student body president, you got to sit on the board of trustees. So now I got to represent the 6,000 students from Winston. You know what I'm saying, on this board and make sure that these like old people ain't taking advantage of them and like we're moving with their best interests at heart. So. And holding people accountable. So
and tapping into this at like 21, 20, 22
yeah, like
years
20,
old.
yeah, like 20,
that's
21.
That's a crazy dynamic.
Yeah, bro. Like by the time I was 20, 21, like so SGA was probably about, the organization as a whole was probably close to 4, 6, 8, 12. Yeah, so you're looking at like close to 30 people, 30-person organization that you managing. The budget was like $150,000. So I pretty much came out of school like having ran a small business.
Right.
On top of having, understood like just how things work, like just how money is moved and understanding institutions and understanding like how cities view institutions and just understanding civics and the role that government actually plays, and having been a part of student government, it's like really a microcosm of like real government. Right. Even to the point where like we were doing Association of Student Governments every single month or once a month. All of the student governments from across the state would come together to talk about student needs, because the ASG president sat on the board of governors, just like we sat on the board of trustees at our schools. So, just having those experiences really just let me understand how things work and how money's move in communities. And that like being on campus is literally like being in a small town. Right. You got a couple thousand people. You got, the grocery store with the little campus stores and stuff. You got cafeterias, like restaurants, plus you got your little food court and all of that. Right. You know what I mean? You got sports and recreation, you YMCA, like you got all these different things. And if you look at it, it's really like a small city. You know what I mean? Going to class is like going to work. Right. You know what I mean? Like you have all of these different things. So when you zoom out and you understand that, like, when you zoom out, you understand that the world is ran by institutions and systems are powered by people. And institutions and systems ultimately have like policies and procedures. So you understand that like change, when we want it, is a matter of convincing people to change pieces of paper so that everybody moves forward, is ultimately what it comes down to. Like even we were drafting resolutions and like everything that goes into government was something that we ended up doing. And then you got like student senate on your campus too, which is like, again, like another extension of student government, just like you got the Senate and Congress and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, bro, it's just like my background and going through that. And I was in student government 3 out of my 4 years. That's crazy. So I was freshman class president, sophomore class president. I wasn't involved in nothing. And then I ran a business fraternity. I ran a business fraternity actually my sophomore year going into my junior year. Then my junior year, I didn't do no SGA. And then that's when I pledged Alpha. And then my senior year, I came back and I was student body president. Yeah. So, my whole, at least the formal part of my education was shaped by, those experiences and that being a big part of my schedule. But then on top of that too, like I was still outside of class doing everything that I was actually interested in. So I picked up photography. Me and the homies was running a brand called United Nation. Me and the homies started Night Pasture. Shout out to Steve. So like, I was doing all these creative things as well on top of just learning about, and I was a business major, so I was learning about business. I was applying what I was learning in the classroom.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Based off of what was happening
And not that
and the
many people
brands and
doing
stuff
that.
we was running. Yeah. And then on top of that, I was just getting all this student government experience. I interned at the Department of Energy for a summer. That's how I knew I wasn't going to be in corporate America long if I did go to corporate America, because I was like, this is trash and I'm not sitting in no cubicle. So I knew I was going to, when I came out of school, I knew I was going to have to do something different. I just didn't know what it was. And I just didn't understand that, like, there's an industry, like these things exist in industries. And that's the biggest thing that I be trying to get creatives to understand, is that, like, it's about industry. It's not about,
job title.
like you got to get out of the mindset of, like, almost like you got to get out of the mindset of, it's just you and your independence and, like, your Instagram account, and, like, understand that, like, nah, like, there's an industry for what you want to do. And that's how you reap the financial implications of, moving your practice and stuff forward. Like, how does the industry that you want to get into move? Not necessarily like just like, oh, I'm doing X, Y, and Z and I'm trying to get the homies to support it, or I need people I went to school with to support it, or my parents or whatever. It's like, nah, bro, like, how does the industry work?
But then, like, how does that come into play when you try to do, like, 5 different things? Is it, like, because I know you've told me this plenty of times, but probably you have to reiterate it. But, yeah, like, how does that work when you try to do, like,
you got to
5
set up a
different
model that works. So, like, if you try and do 5 different things, all 5 different things may not generate money.
Right.
So what's going to generate money?
Okay.
You start there, just because we're in a capitalistic system.
Right.
And not, I'm not telling nobody to chase a bag or do nothing
Of
like
course.
that. I do things that I'm passionate about and trying to find ways for it to align. Like, I bit the bullet. So, like, I left corporate America and went to Zoomies and started making like $7 an hour, because I had the ability to do that, because my girlfriend at the time, now ex-wife, was like, you don't look happy at your job. Like, you really need to do something. Like, I know what you doing all this other work outside of work.
Right.
Like, why don't you just chase that?
Right.
And, like, she supported it. My family somewhat supported it. Like, they didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
They was like, okay, we guess you've gonna figure it out. So sure, you can move back home. Sure, you can do this. Sure, like, what's the name? Checking on me at family functions and stuff like that. But yeah, bro, it's about setting up your system to be able to do that. And I took the time to explore that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It took me 5 years to get back to making what I was making at Coca-Cola.
Right.
But I had to go through the ringer. You know what I'm saying? I had to go work retail. I had to get that experience. Is really what it was, bro, and figure out, because I was switching industries. I was switching from, or switching, like, really pipelines, and going from, like, a place of, like, oh, I got a job, I got a school, I got a degree, I got a job that's kind of somewhat aligned with that degree, like, to, like, nah, I got to go build something on my own.
And that's where I'm
So
at.
when you want to do 5 different things, you got to put a system in place that allows for you to do those 5 different things. And, like, what parts are you delegating? What's generating the money?
Right.
How much effort do you want to spend in each thing? And you just got to think about that and map all that out. And then you just plan towards it. Right. And then just check stuff off the list.
Yeah. It's crazy, because it's just like, when you were going back to when you were in university and, like, talking about budgets, stuff like that. I had made a post a while back talking about, it's probably kind of wild, probably gonna look at me kind of weird, but going from where we come from, I didn't have that much of a black identity coming out of high school, going into college. So going into college, came to, like, Black Student Union. Yeah. I was like, bro, I'm not about to be a part of Black Student Union. That's I'm segregating myself.
I seen you made the video. I ain't watched the whole thing, but I seen you make some content about that.
Yeah. And I did that, and, like, I look back on it, and, like, I think back, I'm like, 1, I wish I would have went to HBCU. But 2, I'm like, I wish I would have been a part of that, like, the BSU organization, because I didn't understand, like, you talking about funding, like, you lobbying for funding, and I wasn't concerned about, how we were getting treated on campus, black people were getting treated on campus, or our experience, creating or cultivating a specific experience for the black people on campus, and how important that is. Yeah. So it's just wild that, like, at 2021, you're cognizant of these things.
Well, that's the thing, bro. That's what, and granted, you can get those experiences at PWIs. I don't necessarily knock PWIs. I think you should go wherever you gon' think, whatever situation is best for you is where you should go. I personally think that most black people will benefit from going to HBCUs for that very reason. Right. Because you're in an environment that has you in mind and is built for you. Right. So, like, I didn't think about what I mean? There are certain things that I say all the time, one of my favorite things to say is that, like, there's nothing that can prepare you for the experience of being black in America like going to a historically black college. that's just something that I fundamentally believe. Like, you come out of, if you embrace your time there and you don't just go there, because any school can be a party school. That's the thing.
Right.
That's the thing. A lot of people try to tell you, like, oh, HBCU is a party school. Is that and the third? You ain't gonna get no work done. It's like every school is a party school.
Right.
Like it's 18 to 22-year-olds is the core. Like it's gonna be dumb stuff going on everywhere.
Right.
You know,
I
what
never
mean?
heard that. I never heard that. I just always thought ECU was a party school.
Yeah, nah, bro. Every school is a party school. Every school has alcohol. Every school has drugs. Every school has people is having sex. Like, it's a thing. You know, it's college. It's people are experimenting. People figuring themselves out. You're adolescent. You're still a child.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but the difference is, like I said, you got an environment that was built with you in mind and is made to make sure that you get what you're supposed to get if you give those things the attention that you're supposed to give.
And I think that's the key, is because I'm not, when I come in, I'm trying to party, I'm trying to have sex, I'm trying to do whatever. I'm not concerned about building, cultivating an experience.
Ain't nobody thinking about that. But see, the thing was, for me, like, I had tapped in right before I went. It was because really this whole process is self-discovery. Like, everything I think we're going to talk about comes down to, like, self-discovery and knowing yourself, because that's how I ended up on this path, was just being very aware of who I was and what my skills were and the things I was interested in, and just chasing those things. So, like, when I came out of high school, what even gave me the mindset to go into Winston the way that I did was the fact that I did this joint called Junior Achievement in my senior year. And I think we might have talked about that last time. So I'll tell people, go watch the old content if you want that story. I think that story is up there. But either way, my senior year I did Junior Achievement, and that gave me the confidence to understand that, like, okay, business is something that you just know. It's just here. Like, it's just here. There are formal things you're going to learn, but you got a good knack and a feel for just how business works. And that gave me the confidence to be like, okay, now that I'm going into a new environment and a new space, like, let me just start over from scratch and let me actually try. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't go into high school trying. You know what I'm saying? I came out of there. I went from middle school into high school thinking about basketball.
Right.
And when I found out basketball wasn't going to be a thing,
I
didn't really have no motivation after that. I was just kind of coasting. You know what I'm saying? So then, you know, after my junior year, and I figured out, like, okay, we're not gonna play basketball in college. You know, I'm chilling. I'm just trying to get out of high school. Yeah. But then once that switch flipped, and I realized that, like, okay, you actually do have some value or, like, some skills that are, like, just kind of in you, and you start to get that positive reinforcement from it, and it just encouraged me to chase it. So I was like, okay, when I go to Winston, I'm just gonna be a whole new cat, because in high school I won't necessarily, like, I won't super duper popular, but I wasn't, like, and granted the school wasn't that big, but I wasn't super duper popular, but I also wasn't, like, lame. You know what I'm saying? Like cats knew who I was. I was kind of middle of the road, if you will. Like, but I wasn't the guy. So, like, when I got to college, I was like, oh, nah, I'm about to be the dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, none of these people know me. That's when I changed my name. I started going as Dave. Instead of going from David to Dave, like, I started introducing myself as Dave, because it was like, this is a new mindset for me. This is a new space. So I'm gonna go by a new name. So I started introducing myself as Dave. I actually started introducing myself as Dave with a period at the end. And I used to tell people, if they didn't put the period, they spelled my name wrong. And that was something that was like a conversation. Yeah. And, like,
that's hard.
Like, so whenever I put my number in a girl's phone, it was like, Dave it had a period in it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Dave, but don't forget the period though. Like, if you don't put a period up there, like, it's wrong, it's spelled wrong. So, like, that was like always a conversation piece. And
it was citizen.
Yeah, exactly. YUNG. It's like the same thing, bro. Like, it was just branding at that point. It was a conversation piece. And, like, you know, girls always liked it. They always like laughed at stuff like that, or, like, they give you a nickname based off of that. Like, some of the homies used to call me, like, Dave Dot. Or, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just comes with, like, it's just a conversation thing. It starts to become, like, some branding. So, yeah, bro, like, that was the beginning of what all of this has become. You know what I'm saying? It's all of those experiences. It's understanding. And even in those times, right, like, paying attention to those things and not doing those things just to be like, oh, yeah, so I can, like, get girls, blah, blah, blah. It's like, nah, like, the psychology of what that does, of having someone remember you, is a skill that you then learn to apply when you're building a brand, whether it's clothing,
teach us,
or, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like all those things. It's when you look at your life holistically, you realize that everything is connected and everything overlaps, and there's a lesson in a moment in everything. You know what I'm saying? So it's paying attention, it's being able to zoom out and look at these moments and understand what you can get from them. Right. You know what I'm saying? And how that can be applied in your life moving forward.
Right. So kind of like switching pace a little bit. One of the things I've always heard you tell me in terms of like what it is that you're trying to do or goal is you're trying to create space for Black people. So could you kind of expound on like, is that creative space? What exactly is that space that you're trying to create?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a term, right? And it means physical space, but it also just means like in rooms, in conversation, in like consciousness.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
people's
just
frames of mind.
Exactly. Like creating space for Black people. Like, because a lot of times, sometimes, and to your point about even with the Black student union, sometimes even Black people ain't think about creating space for Black people.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying?
And we can get into that because it's like I'm telling you, my frame of reference, I was not. I guess because like situations in my life kind of didn't add up to needing to like okay, I'm in the suburbs. I went to a Christian school my entire life. Like that kind of perspective of, graduate school, went to undergrad, all these different things. It's kind of not necessarily an anomaly, but as far as Black community goes, not a lot of people are graduating from high school, college, secondary, like getting a MBA or something like that. So I guess in my frame of mind, I wasn't necessarily concerned, because I had not faced that much adversity in terms of, I had a single parent home, but hadn't faced that much adversity to where I'm like, okay, I need to create space for Black people to get out.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing too, it's an exposure thing. So like when you talk about those experiences, like I very much had a similar frame of reference when I got to school. But my roommates were just like very intelligent. I don't want to call them hood niggas because they were like polished. But like they were like my one. I was super adjacent to hood niggas based off of who my roommates and stuff were in college. So like I would spend time at home with, I would spend weekends because my roommates was from Greensboro and from High Point. My two best friends from college. So I would spend time in Greensboro with homies that they went to high school with. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And the same thing in High Point.
And
like
opened you up to stuff.
Yeah, so it like opened my eyes to like, okay, these are like. This is how people like people. It opened my mind up to people's mentalities and what and how people who don't get a chance to have the exposure that I was given, why those mentalities are like cemented. And then simultaneously being at a Black school, I was getting the historical context on why and how those things were created. So, it gave me a frame of reference on why it needed to be fixed and why it needed to be changed. You know what I'm saying? So I got like I don't want to call it like a crash course or nothing like that. And I don't want to make it seem like, people who live in certain neighborhoods are like some type of experiment. Now they people at the end of the day. We talking about our people. We talking about Black people. And a lot of times it ain't people's fault why they have that mentality or why they're in that situation. And even people in my family, then you start to think about, dang, like, you start to think about your cousins that have certain mentalities and your cousins that got certain. It's like, dang, you just ain't. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Dang, like I was thinking about you a lot differently. You know what I'm saying? Like it was framed to me that you were that this was about you, and it ain't even about you. It's about where you was born. It's about the zip code you was born in, the neighborhood you was born in, the school you went to, the niggas you hung around. It was about all of that. You know what I'm saying? It ain't really got nothing to do with you. So like
systemically,
you know what I'm saying? So once you figure that out, or once you realize that, you come to that realization, for me, it became my obligation of trying to do what I could to help out people that look like me. And on top of that, like I started to experience it again, like I said, when I got home and I was trying to do certain things at a certain level with creativity and art that I couldn't do. Like I was trying to go into certain rooms and have certain conversations, or like certain things. I found out about certain things like, you know what I'm saying, art grants and residencies and all these different types of things that were related to creativity and the art world that I had never heard of before. And I was like, I'm a pretty sharp nigga. So like, if I don't know about this, the homies definitely don't know about this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it was just one of those things of like, actually after I started to figure out like how resources flow for like arts and creativity and thinking about creative business and creative industry and stuff like that, I was like, okay, like I got to find a way to create space. You know what I'm saying? I got to find a way to enlighten people on that this exists, because I'm constantly with homies who are doing stuff and trying to take their projects and build businesses and do X, Y, and Z, but they keep hitting walls and they they don't even understand. Some of them don't even realize that they're hitting a wall. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They just think that it is the way that it is. Regular, you know what I'm saying? It's like, nah, bro, it's just how it is. And it's like, nah, bro, like
Facebook conversation.
You hitting a wall, bro. Like you really hitting a wall, and like you can't even see the wall. It's like, it's like the concept of glass ceilings or like being in a glass box. It's like you think you can move forward, but like you hitting a wall. And I kept trying to figure out why I was hitting the wall. And I kept going to places where I thought there would be resources. And like, again, I would ask questions and I would probe people. And I would, that was one of the things I would just I would find out about events, basically where like if a white publication was putting on an event or if anything related to have people having conversations about Charlotte, because there was a lot of talks and panels and stuff going on around that time. Because I came back from school in 2013. So the Chetty study that, placed us 50 out of 50 in economic mobility came out around that time, I think. So it was either around that time or like slightly after. So after that, there was this big eruption about like, because Charlotte has this thing about wanting to be, a world-class city, and it kind of just bruised Charlotte's ego, the fact that the world now knew that like if you grew up, in a certain socioeconomic class in the city, you can't get out of that.
Upward mobility, right?
Yeah, upward mobility, yeah. Right. Like you can't get out of that socioeconomic status more than likely. Like it's a very low chance that that's going to happen for you.
Right.
So like Charlotte's ego was bruised, so all these people was having all these conversations and stuff like that, and I would just show up and like just like in regular sweatpants, hood, like what I'm saying. But I would make sure that I was one of the first people to ask a question, and I would make sure that it was a thoughtful and meaningful question that wasn't rooted in any emotion and wasn't rooted in nothing like that could allow for people to get distracted. I was making sure that my questions were action oriented. So then once you get in and you start to talk and you say something like that, or you start going back and forth with somebody that's on a panel, like niggas start looking at you different. They like, who is this dude?
Yeah,
asking this kind of question with it. But it was because I had the previous experience, and then I had the experience and the understanding of knowing what the homies was going through and what the homies was going through. So now I know how to put those two things together and frame a question that's going to challenge whoever is in a position of authority to think about what they're doing and how they're doing it, because I get both sides.
Right.
So it's an interesting spot to sit in when you understand like, people that are in certain communities or people who are into certain things and certain elements of culture. And then how this person that's in a city council seat is how they thinking and what they need and what their personal interests are and all that kind of stuff in terms of like their position and what that means and how to leverage that. Like now we can actually have a substantive like dialogue and conversation about like, cool, how do we bridge the gap between these? Because you ain't gonna think about this because you ain't built the adjacencies that I've built. You know what I'm saying? You ain't spent the time that I've spent. You don't do the things that I do. We just don't go to the same places.
So how important is like that duality? You think like in being able to like know both spaces? I
mean, it's definitely
Black creative.
I'm saying it's my thing, right? Like I can't force that on nobody else. Right. But I think it would behoove you to understand. To understand this. How I'm not telling you to be like a super political person or a super but you should I think all people in general should understand how the world works around them and how, things move and how like where your taxes go and who's getting paid from that. And like, we don't think about those things. You know what I'm saying?
We think about as a black person, we don't think about that.
It's not even about black people. People in general do not think about how the world works. Like think about like, bro, when it's time to set the garbage out on the curb, what do?
Go get the garbage and put it out. Yeah,
that's your part. Right. You ain't thinking about who picking up the garbage. Right. You ain't thinking about how much that person getting paid. You ain't thinking about who hired the person to pick up the garbage. Yeah. You ain't thinking about what part of the government is responsible for it, because all of that kind of stuff is like nobody's thinking about that. The only reason I know about it, like I said, is because I was exposed to it. So now that it's awake, I can't turn that part of my brain off. Now that I've like stored that information, so it's like. Most people in general just don't think about those things. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to certain things, like you should, and especially if you want to, that's the thing. If you want change, right? You need to understand how this works. It ain't even got nothing to do if you cool where you at and you like the way everything is. That's a privilege to have that, and more power to you, I guess. Right. But like for me, like I said, I'm in a pretty okay position. I'm not in the best position. I'm pretty okay position. Cool. But I can't sit back because I know, like, again, it's people hitting walls that they don't even know that they're hitting. Yeah. So I feel like an obligation, again, to be able to create that space to have dialogue, and then also to do what I can to bring them to the table and give them the information that they need to be able to advocate for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because even then, even me being empathetic to certain things, there are still certain experiences that I don't have. You know what I'm saying? I never grew up, you know what I'm saying, eating off food stamps, at least that I know of. Right. I never grew up, you know what I'm saying, having to worry about the lights being cut on or cut off. I never grew up having to worry about the water being shut off. That's not something that I knew about. Right. But I was very close to people who had those experiences, right? So it's, again, like, so that's even a lens or a filter that I have to be cognizant of and be like, okay, word, I may not even be the best person to speak about this, even though I can understand it and speak towards it. It's better for me to be able to bring somebody to the table who can actually attest to having to go through certain things. And it ain't even necessarily got to be about being broke or nothing like that. It could be anything. Right. You know what I'm saying? It could be gender and identity issues. It could be, you know, people who have been raped. It could be all of those different things. Like I can be empathetic towards those things, but a firsthand account is always the best way to advocate for that change. You know what I'm saying? So it's just been about creating space. It's just been about bridging those gaps and helping people understand how things move and how things work, and then also being able to give them the information so they can come to the table and advocate for themselves, and then just doing whatever I can in that process.
And it reminds me of like something Austin always talks about, Austin Smith. Shout out to Austin. He always talks about once you get revelation, you have a responsibility. Yeah. So, and that's not even just talking about like spiritual. They're talking about like with anything.
Nah, like, for real. Like once you're cognizant, bro. Like once you know, like once you like, and that's what cognitive dissonance is like. Yeah. Like cognitive dissonance is like you have a certain frame of reference, and then you get information that counteracts that, but you can't let go of your current lens. Like that's what cognitive dissonance is. Like you have to make an excuse to hold on to your current view or your current lens, which is like, there's a lot of that going on right now in a lot of different spaces. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I may have given like, that may not be the exact definition, but it's to that tune or to that tone.
Cause it's like, that's kind of basically like what's going on in my life right now. Like I listened to a podcast. I talked about it on some of my content before. Like I listened to a podcast called Trillionaires like a year or so ago. Started listening to that. You good over there?
Yeah, we good. Sure.
Yeah. I started listening to that, and that kind of first set me off on the tangent. Like, 400-year head start. When I first heard that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I started getting into the facts, and I'm currently reading this book about like the black tax, about basically it's like there's a tax on like black folk in terms of the system and how it's been set against us. And I'm like, what? And now it's like it's all leading up to me like, okay, I can't shut up about it. I gotta keep talking about it. Okay, I keep posting Facebook stuff about it. Keep getting in conversation with people that don't get it, because I'm trying to help people get it now, because I finally been awakened to it.
Yeah, bro, and that's the thing too. It's like I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, and like again, like as you grow up, all of these, like just like me, right? I got to take that into account too. Just like me, and I have my experiences. People have had their experiences, right? And the dialogue is hopefully to exchange those experiences and hopefully being able to put us in a position to be able to move things forward. And it's interesting because you don't want it to be a like us versus them. I tweeted the other day, right? I said, them must become us for progress. Like in order for things to move forward, eventually we have to see each other as like the same, which is what empathy and all that stuff is. It's like me and you are the same, right? But when people's perspective of what same is different, now we got to have a different conversation. You know what I'm saying?
And that's what it is.
Because it's like when you think the same is like, oh yeah, we was born in America. It's like, well, okay, wait a minute. There's different experiences that are related to that.
I see you as equal. There's black people in the Senate. Yeah. Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's different. So it just becomes a different conversation.
Right.
But ultimately, bro, that's what creating space is about. It's like, you know, again, just pushing for black people to be thinking about black people, pushing for other people to be thinking about black people. And my specific scope just happens to be mostly like creativity and arts. And then really I get the ability through my job to do it from a bunch of different other perspectives as well, like housing and education, all these different things. Yeah. But creativity, arts, and education and culture is kind of like my thing. Yeah.
Getting black people to think about people, that's deep. I wanted to kind of hit on like in terms of like doing the work for communities, like what does like impactful work look like in terms of like that evoke change. So in terms of how to evoke change, within communities, what does that impactful work kind of look like? If you can kind of give like pillars.
Yeah, I mean, everything is like, I call it, in one of my phrases, I always say that this is 1-to-1 work. Like this is about having those individual conversations and changing that one perspective. No matter whose it is or what perspective you're trying to get them to change to, it's just about providing them with information and hopefully broadening their perspective and changing their perspective to include that information, right? And for me, it's a lot of celebrating small wins. It's a lot of having the proper conversations, and then every once in a while, you get a big win of being able to, you vote. You get enough people to vote for something, and something changes, or you get enough people or you're able to get a program funded that gets kids laptops now that they're going back to school. Like,
right.
Those are the types of things that you check off in the wins column, and impact looks different for everybody. Right. Like, my goal ultimately from the retail stuff that we're doing is if we can empower the organizations, our community partners, and organizations and individuals that rock with us from a retail perspective, like we can empower them to make the change in their communities. Because that's another thing too, is we ain't jumping in nowhere and like parachuting in and just you being like, right. Oh, here's this for everybody. And
right.
Like, we like, nah, who's doing the work? And how can we empower those people more? How can we plug into them and amplify what they're doing? Because we're ultimately not based here. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have a store here. Right. We contribute here. But we want to do more than just sell y'all cool sneakers and T-shirts,
right.
and button-downs and jeans and stuff. Like, we want y'all to have, to understand and get some agency about how your community moves. You know what I'm saying? About how you can push your community forward. You know what I mean? And how we can create change. And the trinkets are just what gets your attention. Like, the fact that we got the sneakers is just what gets people to tap in. Value. But then we start to have real conversations with people. You know what I'm saying? Or especially again with creatives, bro. Like, it's the same thing that's happening in Charlotte. It's happening in every other market. It's just, especially where we have stores, because they consider it like second tier markets by the standards of like fashion and sneakers.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's not New York. It's not LA. It's not Miami.
Right.
You know
okay. Second tier. I see what you're saying.
So like when you talk about Charlotte, when you talk about Tallahassee, you talk about Tampa, you talk about Pittsburgh, you talk about Atlanta, Houston. These are
Atlanta second tier?
Yeah. Yeah, bro. Yeah.
They ain't first tier yet?
Yeah, okay. Nah. But even then, like, people be like, I'm going to go to Atlanta because Atlanta got it lit. And then, like, when I'm on the ground talking to the homies in Atlanta, they like, bruh, it ain't nothing here. You know what I'm
it's
saying?
Social
like,
media, that's
like,
what it is.
Bruh, but that's what I'm saying. Like, now, granted, are there more creative opportunities in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Potentially. Depending on for the things that most people are looking at, probably right. Because music is a core industry down there.
Right.
Film is now becoming a core industry down there.
Yeah.
So there's going to be there's a lot more. You could probably bump into more creative work. You know what I'm saying? For and same thing with New York. It's a number of people there. You know what I'm saying? But when you talk about what it takes for you to have a career, you're going to have to do the same thing no matter what market you in. And a lot of people don't realize that. So like I said, when I'm talking to the homies in Houston or talking to the homies in Atlanta or, tapping in with some people in Tampa or whatever, there's just a lack of creative industry. There's the creatives don't have anything to plug into to help amplify what they're doing. There's no resources. You know what I'm saying? Like if you understood, like, for instance, when we talk about historical context, right? Like, and I think we talked about it on that one Facebook post.
Yeah.
When I talked about how, like, after the Louisiana Purchase, you know what I'm saying? Like, cats were given resources from the federal government. To the
GI bills
to like farm that land,
right?
Like giving the land, giving courses on farming, giving the equipment,
right?
Like all of these things were given, right? So when you talk about like resources being available to people who are trying to build industry, it's like you have to have something that jumpstarts that. There has to be resources available for people to be able to build something.
Right?
It's really tough to build something from nothing, especially when you talk about capitalism. So when you talk about like creatives or you move that to community, it ain't no different. Cats like to act like it's different. It's like it's not a different conversation. And there's a difference between like that and a welfare program that like requires certain things, like a man not being in your house to be able to like have access to them. Like that permanently cripples people, as opposed to like giving them the bridge that they need to be able to move forward. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times these resources that are given and the way that resources are structured in the system, they perpetuate the issues that they're causing, right?
I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? So like, perfect example. And I was reading a book. It's a book that I've been talking about if I've done anything like where I'm talking
Fortunes?
to anybody about anything, not Black Fortunes, the other joint is called Decolonizing Wealth by Edgar Villanueva. But it talks specifically about the philanthropic sector, the nonprofit sector.
Okay.
And like working in foundations and stuff like that. So he's a Native American, Lumbee Indian.
I tried to watch one of his talks. I couldn't understand anything.
You said what?
I tried to watch one of his talks like on YouTube.
Yeah,
I couldn't understand.
yeah.
I was like, I got to get a book.
Yeah,
like,
it's a different world because most people don't even think about the world of philanthropy. They don't even know what it is or how it exists, but it overlaps with a lot of the work that I do, especially now with like Hugh House and stuff like that. But anyway, and it did at the university level too. Like there were nuggets there that I'm still connecting dots back to my experience at WSSU and thinking about models and how all that stuff works. But one of the things that I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, was it? It had something to do with resources.
Yeah, it did.
We were talking about resources, and then perpetuating the same issue. So perfect example of like you may have so like how people who are like giving back a lot of times in the current system are like perpetuating the issues. So you may have a company that like, you know, let's say it's like a lotion company. The lotion company has like cancer causing agents in the lotion, but they're simultaneously like donating money to breast cancer research.
Right.
Like that's a lot of what happens and it's a lot of what happens. That's a perfect
example. Bro, and a woke example is the same thing.
It happens a lot. Right. You know what I'm saying? Not just in that space, but like when it comes to government, exactly. Like funding, where there's a lot of things there are a lot of things that are required for you to be able to get government assistance that continues to cripple you.
But they're creating.
It's created that way. Exactly. Yeah, it's created that way. It's not. It's not made for you to get on your feet. And then people eventually become conditioned into that. Once you talk about like generations on generations on generations of being born in this type of area,
right? And
or in this type of system, or having to interact with this type of system, like you get the effects of what we see for a lot of people. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's creating cycles. So that's a lot of what people fail to realize, and that's the difference between like those farmers in the Louisiana Purchase and like, you know, government assistance now. It's like, especially with the government assistance being targeted at certain communities. Right. And that being reinforced by redlining and that reinforces where the schools go, which means you're getting less education. Like it's all connected. But if you don't understand again how these things are put in place, you wouldn't understand that you're hitting a wall or why you're hitting a wall. Right.
It'll just be like, oh, that's just how it is.
Exactly.
Consistency.
100%.
And just continue to work hard, put yourself up by your bootstraps, all that stuff like that, and continue to ignore it.
Some of those things are true, right? Right. Like I don't want to.
You don't want to be lazy.
Yeah, 100%. I'm never gonna tell nobody like, nah, you don't got to do nothing because the system's against you.
Right.
Like you got to work that much harder, obviously, but you need to be able to have acknowledged those barriers and understand those barriers. You know how to navigate them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you have to acknowledge context. You have to acknowledge history and the role that it's played. And that's all I want people to do. You can acknowledge context and acknowledge history without trying to, you know, sugarcoat it or just blame the person or just like, it's like, bro, it's way deeper than that. You got to acknowledge that. And you got to set the context and the backdrop for what it is. And you got to step outside of the frame and reference of history that was given to us based off of like what we get in school or based off like that information is not the information that's going to like liberate you for real. Yeah. It's not the information that's going to open your mind. It's not the information that's going to like let you understand how things actually move.
Yeah. And that's the lie. That goes with the school system, another systemic issue. It's just like 100%. We're not being taught what we need to be taught.
100%.
We're taught just what you can grade. Like I think I read about that like a couple years ago. Like they can't grade you on certain things. So because they haven't figured out a system on how to grade you, they got to sick you with these regular textbooks.
Yeah, because school is made for you to be a worker.
Right, industrial complex, right? Industrial, something like that.
Yeah. It has to do with that time of industry of warehousing, not warehousing, manufacturing being created.
Assembly line.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Once all that stuff was created, it was like, okay, cool, we got to make workers. That's when school was made the way that it's why it's timed the way it is. It's why you start responding to bells. It's why you start like all of those things are programmed from.
I read that. I watched a video on that shook me. I was like,
it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, bro. So it ain't necessarily made for you to be a free thinker or independent thinker. It's made for you to
be a worker,
be tapped in. Yeah, and it's all economics,
right?
For sure.
Yeah, it's like it's
just impact looks like getting people to understand the systems they exist in and why they exist and have that historical context. And it don't have to be in full. I'm not asking you to be a super history buff, but again, if you want to be able to move things forward, you got to understand why things are the way they are and how systems got to where they are to be able to navigate them appropriately.
Right.
And then understand that, again, changing it is nothing but like changing people's opinions or being able to leverage people based off of their obligations to get what. And
do you think there's like a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to like creating change? Like, because with me, like in my head, I'm thinking about like, man, I want to do these same type of things, but kind of, I guess, in my mind, it's kind of like creating that whole smoke and mirrors effect. Like, it's much bigger than what it is.
Well, I mean, here's the thing too, right? It's all each one teach one, and you reach one. You know what I'm saying? Like you. As long as you do, I want you to do what works in your sphere of influence. I want you to do what you're passionate about. I want you to do that with this in mind.
Right.
I'm not trying to get you to go run for whatever.
Yeah.
Which is why people are like, hey, bro, you gonna run for mayor? I'm like, nigga, no. Because I understand that, like, at least here, politics ain't it.
Yeah.
You need to be rich.
Right.
If you want to make change in Charlotte, just be rich.
Right.
The persons and people who have made all of what Charlotte is, they were rich. You know what I'm saying? And not even necessarily saying it's my goal to be rich, but how do we make the community rich enough to be able to make the changes that are needed? Specifically talking about Charlotte.
Right.
And that's where a lot of my context is. And I'm learning more about other cities, obviously, because I'm doing work in these other cities. But a lot of my frame of reference comes back to Charlotte. But it's like, yeah, like the people who make the change here are rich. They're affluent. It has nothing to do. Like, government is a part of it, but a lot of times people in politics are being leveraged by people who are rich to get things done. They're being institutions are being leveraged by people who are rich to get things done, and that's just how Charlotte moves and how Charlotte works. We're finance capital, we're banking capital. Everything flows from the main industry, which is money. So
that's probably a lot of places too. So
yeah, I mean, it's that. But again, I'm not looking for you to be some finance person. If you like dance, do what you can through dance. If you like media, do what you can through media. If you like basket weaving, do what you can through basket weaving.
Right.
But do it, like, all of these things are a form of liberation if you do it with the historical context.
Okay. Yeah, because that leads into kind of segueing into like what in terms of me and like what does that impact work look for me? Because it's like I was just telling you, I'm trying to amplify more Black voices. I've been awakened to the system, and I'm like, okay, what I'm trying to do, okay, I just want to amplify Black voices only. If it doesn't have anything to do with a Black context or Black culture or educating us or uplifting us, then I don't really want to be a part of it anymore in this whole with when it comes to media. But just trying to figure out, like, okay, am I just staying here with it? Meaning, like, is it just through the interviews and the conversations and the documentaries? Is that enough? You know what I'm saying? Do impact, for impact.
Only you can determine that, bro. If you feel like an urge or a call and do something different or something bigger, then you got to figure out what that urge is and what feels like it's right. I mean, it's one of those things too where the work is never really done for real. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if we got reparations, the work still ain't done. Right. Like, it ain't time to put your feet up. You still got to maintain. You still got things to build. You still got other people's mindsets to open up. And that's why I guess I'm most passionate about this work. Like, this is forever work, bro. This is just something that, like, there's always something better to push towards. And it ain't even necessarily about better being material, but just, again, gaining more knowledge, gaining more understanding, connecting with more people, having more substantive dialogue. Right. Like, all of those different types of things are things that fuel me and things that I'm passionate about. You know what I'm saying? And changing systems for them to do those things for people. Because they inherently should, but they've been, like, manipulated over time. And I think now, through, like, stuff that's going on with BLM and stuff that's going on, just nationally, people are starting to understand that that's the case. That, like, this actually was set up against a specific group of people. In a lot of ways. And there's a lot of challenges for a lot of different people too. So, I mean, obviously not to weed out, not to discredit anything that's happening to any other people, but I would definitely, there's definitely, like, a lot of space to be created for Black people.
Right. Yeah. There's still a lot of work to be done. Yeah. So we're going to get into this cultural vulture stuff.
Word.
Yeah. I want to talk about it. So basically, a culture vulture is somebody that kind of weans off of the, like, substance or culture of like the black community or black culture, them not being black, and using it to their advantage to build popularity or fame or claim or clout, and then not giving back to that said community that they're
and then
doing from.
And less about giving back as much as it is like truly like being a part of, and I guess that is giving back to a certain degree, but like like it's about authenticity more than anything,
right?
Like you ain't really with us,
right?
You just with us because it's profitable.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. You with us because it has a certain amount of like clout or money or fame or whatever tied to it. So like culture vulture is anybody who ain't really with us. You know what I'm saying? Because you can give back and not be with us. There's a lot of people that give to black people that ain't with us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like culture vulture is anybody who like has built a platform using black aesthetics, black culture, you know what I mean, but isn't with us for real in all ways. You know what I'm saying? So that's my definition anyway.
And one of whom kind of came up and is coming up in a lot of conversations is Fox 46 Nick, a cat that's been around for a couple years, but not until I want to say. When did she make that video? A week ago?
Yeah, maybe two ago.
Is when it kind of clicked for me because I followed it up until that point until she made me realize I'm like, yeah, he hasn't really been with us, and I'm starting to and like I said, with the whole me awakening and me caring more about the community and more about amplifying black voices, I'm like, I'm not with that, so I unfollow Cat, but I just kind of wanted to get into your perspective, like with like the culture, like what's the specific thing I wanted to ask? So them using black culture when it's best for them, but not when it's needed the most. And I kind of just wanted to just hear your thoughts about Fox 46 Nick and everything.
I mean, for me, it ain't even about Nick because I don't know, bruh.
Like,
I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he takes care of his kids and pays his taxes and all of that. But I don't know, bruh. Personally, never had a conversation with bruh. But at the same time, it's about what it's more so about what he represents. It's a case study. And it's like, and for me, it's a case study because it shows up in other ways in Charlotte. It shows up in like, hiring black artists to paint Black Lives Matter on Tryon Street. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, if we're not going to actually move things forward, that's like, it goes in the same bucket. Like, you with us, but you ain't really with us. You look like you with us. And Charlotte, a lot of times, look like it's fake progressive. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, like the money really moves the needle here. But people be like, oh no, we mostly black population, and then we got black mayor, mostly black city council, black this, black that. But it's like
smoke and mirrors. Yeah,
I mean, and not even necessarily smoke and mirrors as much as it is like understanding that a system is a system,
right? And
if the people that are in those chairs and those seats aren't willing to change the actual system, then.
Yeah, I think it's also too like a perspective of that being the change. Like back when all this Black Lives Matter, like when it was really heavy, there's like white people in the comments on one of my old coworkers' posts, and it's just like, oh, there's black people in the Senate. I look at you as equal. There's black people doing this. We had a black president, all stuff like that, and like settling. I think I made a Facebook post about this, but like. We look at equality as settling for these just positions.
Yeah, and that's being the end goal. To be fair. That's what equality is.
Right.
Equality is you have the same thing. We are sitting on the same amount of couch.
Right.
We're equal. But like, what's the problem? What happens if you got a back injury? You might need some more support for the couch. But so it's about equity versus equality.
Okay.
And that's the conversation now we're moving into a conversation about equity and a conversation about ownership. So like, it goes from being like, do you have the same to are we repairing what's been done? What are we systemically undoing what's been done systemically?
Right.
Because people were put into neighborhoods systemically. So now we need to do what we need to do to break those neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? Or make it available for people to move out of those neighborhoods if they want to, or build up those neighborhoods.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Appropriately. You know what I'm saying? Like, people were not allowed to have access to capital to
to take part in home ownership, which is a big basis of wealth here in America.
Yeah.
So, are we going to make sure that they have even more access now to capital to be able to do those things? You know what I'm saying? At preferred rates, at the same rate and at the same way
and
that they were.
Loans.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
At the same way and the same rate that they were excluded from it originally. And that's the conversation that we should be having. It's like, are we undoing literally the things that were done? Not, are you able to do it now?
Right.
Because that's what makes people feel like, and that was the thing. That was a conversation. Like 100%. That's what our ancestors. That was their fight. Mm-hmm. Our ancestors' fight was it seemed to be like, oh dang, like we need to have the same as white people. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, nah, bruh. I need that.
Plus what's owed to me, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I need back taxes. I need you to pay
back taxes.
What I owe, because this ain't, we done, and that's the thing. That's the crazy part too, bro. When you do the research, even in spite of everything, we still built what we had. And it was stolen. Mm-hmm. It was violently stripped away and taken. Right. It was systemically removed. Right. Like, even in spite of all the barriers, we still built what we had and better. We built that 3-4 times over. But every time we build something, it gets violently taken from us.
Or gentrified.
You know what I'm saying? Like it gets removed. And that's the part that really annoys me too. That's why I said you got to acknowledge historical context, bro. We ain't even talking about the fact that Cats is expecting a handout. We talking about the fact that we built it without the handout, and it was destroyed, like physically with fire and bullets. Yeah, like with knives, like people murdered, blood spilled, businesses burned, literally. Several times over and over in history in several different parts of the country. Right. Like, so when people start to talk about like, and I know we're supposed to be talking about culture vultures, but
this is leading
but when people, but like when people start to talk about like, this is just this whole mentality of ignoring what's actually been done, this lack of understanding, this lack of seeing, and then to like, it's just so interesting, bro. One of the things that I am coming to grips with is the fact that we are always going to have the moral high ground. Like, we're always going to be in this position of like, we can't do to other people what was done to us. Like we're just not, we just can't. Yeah. Like if black people were, and that's the thing too. There's a quote, I think it might be Farrakhan. I think that's one of Farrakhan's like clips that's been floating around, where he talks about the reason white people do that and the reason white people act that way, or people in general act that way against black people, is because they're afraid that we'll do to them what was done to us. That's why you got all these white power groups, bro, because they're afraid that they gonna end up being slaves. They afraid that we'll take over the government and do X, Y, and Z, and we'll literally reverse exactly what was done to them.
Yeah, and when they hear the word revolution, that's what
they think about. They think about like, oh dang, they're gonna come and burn down my house and
kill white folks.
Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, bruh, I literally just want to start a business and get access to a business loan. Nobody thinking about burning down your house. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Facts.
Like, but on the flip side, in the 50s, 40s, 30s, you know what I'm saying, 1800s, 1900s, that's what was being done to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, a business would get burned down for being black. Right. People would get killed for being black. Right. Like, so now they're really afraid of retribution, bro. That's what all this like whole like white nationalist, white power stuff is about, bro. They really just afraid. But I'm coming to grips with like, where's the and not to say that that's my thought process, like, oh, I want to go burn down a white, like, I'm not thinking about that. But I'm coming to grips with the thought, or just understanding like, dang, bro, we really do have like, this like moral sense. Like we're just in a, I don't want to say we're in a higher moral class than white people, because people like, but you get what I'm saying? Like, there's no way or space for us to be able to do that. We can only stay focused on doing what's right. Only stay focused on that.
Yeah. It reminds me of like a question somebody asked me. They blocked now. But they said like, did I think that white people were better than me or whatever, just because of the stance that I've been taking and stuff like that. That I like on the outside looking in, does it look like that? And I'm like, does it really look like that? I'm like, no. It's like I just want black people to have what's been owed, But hearing that, it's just like, why does a black man taking pride within his race, but then also taking a stand for what he believes in and for his race? Why does it look like I hate the other race? Like, it's not like, what's that quote? It's like pro-black is not anti-white or whatever. Like, yeah.
And I mean, again, bro, it's a fear. It's a deep embedded fear. Is all it comes down to. They scared. Yeah. A lot of people are scared. Yeah. Black and white. Yeah. But they shook, bro. Like, as a culture, they're scared because they know people know right from wrong, bro. Yeah. And like history, a couple Google searches will show you like
it'll pop up
what's been wrong. So, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, bro. And anybody who may have that type of perspective, they just might just be super white adjacent. Like, there are a lot of black people that are super adjacent to white people. Like, they just have really close relationships with white people. Mm-hmm. I'm personally not one of them people. Right. I have a few white friends on my phone that I keep up with. A lot of homies that are doing now, like, especially more so now, because it's been two specific types of people that, like, I've been closely paying attention to during this time, and been wanting to, like, I've had more mental and emotional capacity to handle the work of interacting with these people, and that's white allies, and white allies who are educating white people, and black people in the church who are using Jesus as an excuse to still be oppressed. So it's specifically been during this time, like, of like, whether it's like BLM or like whatever, just this moment of like consciousness of black people coming to people's consciousness. There's been two groups of people that I've been like kind of like created more like mental space and like emotional capacity to be able to have conversations with. And one of them is, like I said, white allies who are doing the work of like educating their white counterparts, right, and like their family members and stuff like that. And black people who are Christians who are continuing to like use this framework of Jesus to be, to be why everything is okay and why unity and peace and blah 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 and whatever.
Can you get into that for me, please? Just provide some duality. Can you get into that second person for me?
Well, I mean, I just because like yes,
that perspective.
Yes, there is a element of Christianity that refers to, it is about peace. It's about love. It's about treating people as brothers and sisters. Right. It's about all of those, all the flowers and roses and all of that kind of stuff.
But when it comes to justice, we gotta just pray about it.
Yeah, like, or not even just pray about it, but just like cats be acting like I just don't know what Bible they reading and what Jesus they talking about. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to like being able to like fight for what's right.
I think it's the context is because like when the Bible says Pharisees, it don't say white folk, it say Pharisees. Or it don't say, when it says Gentiles, it don't say black folk, it just say Gentiles. Yeah. So because I guess the cultural context, we're not able to see it. But I'm like, if you do your research, you'd be able to connect the dots.
Yeah, and I mean, but for me, it's like even if you take, because that's the thing too. It's like, I'm just really, and granted, I'm learning more about like the Bible itself to be able to create these examples and be able to even have these conversations. But that's the thing. It's like cats will try and lean on like just straight theology. And it's like, bro, I get it. I understand the importance of study of the Bible and study of religious context and constructs and all that kind of stuff. Like, I get it, but there are just things that are just common sense, bro. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are just things that just make sense,
right?
There are things that are just human, regular
that you don't need.
You don't have to find some like deep rooted justification from some old book to be able to say that this is right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so to me, and for me, I've operated and moved off of that for a very, very long time because it took me a long time to find a church as an adult or as a young adult that I understood, or that like where the preaching and the theology lined up with what I was feeling about my walk and about my relationship. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it just really hurt. It's more because I'm sad, bro. Like, you really are going to allow like something that has been, it's another part of the manipulation. It ain't no different than history. You know what I'm saying? Like, religion has been manipulated in time,
right,
just
exactly.
like history and all these other things
right.
have been manipulated to make us have a certain frame of reference,
right,
as it relates to black people. Mm-hmm. So I can't allow for it just don't exist. And then once you read it and you get the actual context, you put everything in context, it's like, yo, how could you not understand that this is like not the same thing? Like, this is not a one-to-one, you know what I'm saying, translation of like how you apply these principles and laws and thought processes and all of that. Like, this is just, so for me, it's really because I'm sad, bro. Like, you're really making an excuse to be oppressed, and you gonna let it be an old book that is being used out of context that has like pick something else, bro. Like, don't pick Jesus, bro.
Right.
Like, come on, don't pick another black man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? You
Yeah.
gonna like. So that's for me. That's the only reason I've been engaging in that dialogue, because it's like, yo, like, there are a lot of, even with God in general, bro. And this kind of goes back to like one of them conversations we was having after church about like, you know, ancestors, and everybody talking about it now because the Beyonce visual and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yo, even with how we thinking about God, or even how we think about spirituality, we already understand that there are certain concepts that we don't get.
Yeah.
Like, we can't understand the fullness of God. We can't understand all of the matrix that exists, that is the existence of our creator.
Right.
Like, it can't be fathomed.
Yeah,
it's not downloaded into us to understand it.
Right.
We can't understand eternity. Mm-hmm. We can't, like, we can think like that's forever and like, but there's no tangible,
right.
As a person, as a human, there's no tangible portion of that.
Right.
So like, for me, when people express certain concepts, I'm not so quick to just be like, oh, well, is that in the Bible? Or, oh, well, is that? Because, bro, we don't understand how infinite God really is. Mm-hmm. So we don't know. Yes, we have a divinely inspired book that leads us and guides us and provides instructions for us, right. And that can be dissected and can provide several examples, and it is a text. But again, like, to go back to the core requirement, it's belief in Christ. Mm-hmm. Once you get past that threshold, not to say that anything is, because I mean, again,
it's not fair game,
right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's not just go do whatever, right? But I'm saying that, like, I'm pretty sure there are some concepts as it relates to understanding God, spirituality, connections to like, just to even think that, like, bro, when you think of, and a lot of the homies are having kids now.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at my homies' children, and I am amazed, because I'm like, yo,
that's
like,
a human,
bro. Yes. Like, this is a little person
that came out of you,
that the homie is responsible for.
Yeah.
But like,
it has rights.
But yeah, but has like, but bro, like, bro, that essence, like, like, they have a spirit. Like, it can't, like, they came out of the ether.
Yeah.
Like, they came, like, the process, the internal process of creation,
right,
like, occurred.
Yeah.
And this was the fruit.
I say that about my godchildren a lot.
Yes,
like,
bro.
A child.
Yeah, no, for real. Like, but for real.
Right.
And when you think about that, it's like, yo, we don't understand that. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously we understand the process of childbirth, right? 9 months, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
they develop a brain at this point. Like, we studied all of that from a scientific perspective.
Bones form from nothing.
But bro, it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
and they start to, like, obviously they start to develop personality and that and the third. Yeah. But like, it comes out of the ether, bro. It comes out of, like, the way that we were designed and created, and that is, to me, it's like, when you look at examples like that. Mm-hmm. Like, but you want me to believe that God want me to be oppressed. Like, but you want me to believe that we just created to accept this for what it is. Right. But, like, you know, like, I just, those, like, just that whole, or you want me to believe that, like, anything that don't look like what you've seen before is devil worship. Right. I'm not just going to equate everything to being devil worship. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Right. Because that just don't make sense. Right. Because we don't even understand the fullness of God. So how can you understand the fullness of spirituality and religious connection.
Right.
Do I believe that there's a good side and a bad side to everything? Yes. Do I believe that things can be used for good and evil? Yes. But at the same time, I'm like, yo, we can't be so quick to discount certain things. And like, again, we got the Holy Spirit. Allow him to filter out what works and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
But you can't be so quick to be like, oh, this nigga weird.
Yeah.
This nigga talking about, they talking to X, Y, and Z. They strange, bro. Because it's like, as somebody who lost, or someone who's lost a parent at a very young age, I can tell you specific examples of one, the incident when I lost that parent, and incidences beyond that in my life where I felt like he's been present. So like, we can't, you know what I'm saying? Even to the fact that like, cats will be like, even our perspective on just like angels and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Like, we believe that there are angels that protect us and guide us and help us. Who's to say where them angels come from or who those angels are or what they look like?
Right.
That's not outlined in black and white in this book.
Correct.
So there's no way to put a framework around that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And you can't really judge somebody for having experienced that and feeling like they have a framework that works for them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So stuff like that really gets under my skin, bro. And like, I just feel like it again, it's another form of control.
Yeah.
And you shutting out so many people and you making so many people feel like it's not something that's for them when it's supposed to be something that's already theirs. And that irritates me, bro. That really irritates me. And when you start to use it to justify like injustice, or when you try and use it as a crutch for injustice, or when you try and be like, put everything under Jesus, like, oh, all lives matter because Christ died for everyone. Like, bro, please,
the
like
color that matters
that's
is
not,
red. I used to say that,
bro. But yeah, like all of those things, bro. It's like, yo, that doesn't line up, bro. Like, that's not what we talking about. That's not how that works. Like, yes, Jesus died for everyone, but that doesn't mean that we ignore injustice. That doesn't mean that we ignore, you know, things that haven't been done right, because the Jesus that I know was constantly at war with the political system. He was constantly dealing with the religious system and the political system. The people that founded the first church were constantly at war with the political system and constantly going to war with people from religious institutions. You know what I'm saying? Because these institutions, again, are man-made. There are no deities walking among us. There are only people who have spent time crafting stories and thought processes and frameworks around these books. So who's to say that we can't craft another story or framework around this book?
And what I kind of be like harping on as well is the fact that, okay, so he gave us authority and power. So what do I look like if he gave us authority and power to just lay down and just deal with the oppression when there's something that I can do about it? Like, if it bugs you enough, like, and you're praying about it, you just constantly, like I seen the post, some dude was just like, just give it over to God. And I'm just like, you keep giving it over to God, but what if God wants you to do something about it? What if that's your purpose on this earth?
Yeah, 100%.
To do something with it?
And to me, I'm reframing even thing, because it's like, oh, when you start using the word oppressed, people start looking different. So it ain't even about it ain't even about let's say we strip out the term oppression. Let's say we strip out the term injustices, all this kind of stuff. Excuse me, just the fact of things being looked at as right and wrong. Just that core principle of right and wrong. This person was murdered by someone who was supposed to protect them. Is that right or wrong?
Period.
Now, what's the work that needs to be done to prevent that from being a thing? Is the only conversation. That's it. It don't really got nothing to do with, don't be, oh, Jesus said, like, okay, yeah, I can love that police officer and still feel like he need to be in jail. Due to the laws of the world and of the system.
I say that all the time. I was like, when people talk about like, grace, I'm like, yeah, if you can go ahead and do whatever you want, but you get in trouble, you still sit your favor behind in a jail cell because you didn't obey the laws of the land, period. So, that's a powerful concept.
Yeah, bro.
One of the things within that IG Live, kind of wrapping up, one of the things in that IG Live you said you want to see representation past performance aspects. You know, in terms of I think you were still kind of talking about the whole culture vulture aspect, but you were talking about you want to see performance past you want to see representation past performance aspects. Could you kind of like dial in with that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So like, I mean, when you talk about performative measures, and when you talk about things that are, you want to talk about things that are beyond just creating an optic or controlling the narrative.
Okay.
Let's get beyond just again, the perception of success or moving forward. And let's get into what actually moving forward looks like. So cool. Let's get past the fact that we got Black Lives Matter mural on the street, and we, you know, changed the tone and got everybody, really sparked everybody else doing it, because we changed it up. Once we changed the joint and did every individual letter, that became the trend. Right. So like DC did the joint was all yellow, and then we came in and gave it the personality, which shout out to all the Charlotte artists that had something to do with that, or, you know, Damon Wesley and all them that put it together and like, you know, curated it in that way for everybody to have their own letter. Fire concept, and obviously we see the ripples of that from a national perspective, right? But like, I never want to discount that, because when you say that, when you bring that up, people always try and act like you discounting the work of the artist. I'm like, nah, mostly black artists worked on that mural. They got paid for it 100%. That's a form of protest. That's a form of, that is a form of liberation. I believe in artist liberation. I believe in expressing. I believe in that. But what I'm talking about is a step beyond that, where that gets to be manipulated and shown as, oh, we moving forward, because that's not actually moving things forward and changing the systems that we live in. Yeah, that helps drive a narrative. That helps create attention. That helps create leverage. That helps create all these different things. But it's what you do with those things, and when you allow those things to be used by other people, it can be seen or be used as performative to the point of like, oh, well, nah, Charlotte actually cares about black people because it's doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, bro, like Charlotte's only ability to defund the police was getting, you know, tear gas removed out of next year's budget. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like that was it. And kudos to Braxton for doing what he could in that moment to leverage everything that was happening to get something done. Yeah. But again, now I don't want to say the real work. Now the next phase of work starts,
it's which not is like about spinning the chair and just giving it back to you like, oh, we did something different, but all you did was really just spin the chair around. You didn't really do any type of work.
Pushing it forward for real. It's about doing the work of the next phase, which is after everything simmers down. How do we have these meetings and talk to these people about changing these policies and changing these pieces of paper? Because that's one of the things that annoys me, bro. It's like, yo, this is pieces of paper. These are documents. These are man-made things that control how money moves, how people are looked at, and there are effects in the real world. Paper, This is paper, bro. Like, and the thing, when you come, like, all of that is the root of, like, people, like, colonization. Like, niggas settled down here and was like, nah, this is ours. And people was like, how? Because we wrote it down. Right. Duh. It's right here. And it's like, bro, we been here, but we wrote it down. Yeah. But, like, we got a whole little situation. Like, you see this whole little civilization we got, but we wrote it down. Yeah. Cool, you don't want to deal with the fact that we wrote it down? I bet. We're just going to
shoot it out.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We'll just handle it the old fashioned way. You know what I'm saying? So it's and eventually you handle it old fashioned way enough way, and everybody starts respecting the pieces of paper. And now you end up with a system that we got now. It's like, okay, cool, that's the system we was born into. But you're like, yo, these are documents, a piece of paper, and laws, and like all this stuff can be changed. And it's our job to do that work, to at least pick the people who we think can do that work. And if they don't do that work, to then get them people up out of there or become the people that do that work. Because that's another thing too, is stop setting the expectation on something external. What are you really doing that actually pushes that forward? Which is why at some point I might get into local politics when I'm like 40 or 50 years old. After I'm done,
he's putting exceptions on it. I got the first word. Dave said you're gonna get into politics one day. I got the first word.
Maybe
got the first word.
Maybe
you got it on
That's
Walk
a
of Drew.
Big maybe. Because I'm just not mature enough to sit in nobody's seat right now. I'm just not. Like,
I get you. That's good perspective.
There are certain times where somebody just needs to be blessed out, you know what I'm saying, with 4-letter words. And you can't really do that when you a politician, when you being held fake accountable and people trying to leverage you and stuff like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I got to be in a mindset and a position that allows for that to happen. And I'm not in that mindset position. Like right now, I got to be able to say some 4-letter words and like bang on some tables and like, you know what I'm saying? I got to be able to move how I need to move to get stuff done. Right. So like,
That's perspective though.
That's just how. That's just so.
Because you'll probably be able to make more change outside of that. Well, not outside of the seat, but the voice is louder coming from. I guess no. In a sense, the voice would be louder coming outside of the seat.
Yeah, it depends. It depends, right? Like if you can, it's about where you are and what your goals are. For me, I'm trying to mobilize as many people as possible, and when you got other noise and other things that are required to be able to sit in those seats, it keeps you from being able to mobilize people for real.
Right.
Because you got to worry about, like, your constituency is everybody. So you can't just be worried about, you can have an agenda and a plan, but a person that's doing that job correctly has to worry about everybody. And I think they lean on that way too much. It's the truth, but I feel like they lean on it, especially our black leadership in Charlotte, they lean on that way too much because we're a majority black city. So if you take
That's still hard for me to believe at times.
If you take care of black people, you're taking care of most of your constituency. But somehow, we always end up taking care of the actual minority portion of our constituency. The actual people who are the minority in the city end up getting most of the benefit. You know what I'm saying? And that's the crazy part that is the city that we live in and the world that we live in a lot of times. Like, I forgot what year it is. I think it might be 2040. Or 2040, like it'll be mostly people of color and biracial people. Really? And white people will literally be by population the minority. You know what I'm saying? It'll be mostly black, mixed, and Latino.
Talking about in the city?
Talking about in the country.
In the country? Wow.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like by population, the way populations are being by the way people are having mixed kids and population population growth just by different populations immigrating and moving here. Like that's so wild. I think it's 2040. Don't quote me on that, but Google that.
Because I'm like, in 20 years still is not enough to close $1 trillion wealth gap. For them to still the $1 trillion wealth gap will probably still exist in 20 years, but yet we'll be the majority in the country. Unless
something changes in 20 years. Because that's the thing too. 20-year time span. Yeah. In the way that we move now and the way technology advances, it's really like 150 or 200 years. Right. Like if you look at it was a good example of that if you watched the joint on Netflix where I forgot what it's called, but I think it's just the CNN joint where they go through the eras. And it talks about the way technology develops. Like if you look at the 90s and 2000s and you look at the difference between the way technology spiked from if you look at you look at the 60s and 70s or 70s, I guess is when computers and stuff kind of started. Right. And modern technology as we know it is during that time, I would suppose, and somebody's probably like, this dude don't know what he's talking about, but it's somewhere in there. You know what I'm talking about? Somewhere in that, the 70s, 80s is when computers and technology really became a thing. That's why we have all the retro stuff that we have now and all that kind of stuff. Right. You immediately think about the 70s, 80s. So when you think about what a computer looked like in the 80s, or even in the 60s, I guess. Because Hidden Figures and all that stuff is from the 60s. That's civil rights era. You're talking about computers were taking up full rooms. Right. To bro, that was 40, 50 years ago. Exactly. Now it's in a phone. Right. So when you think about that type of advancement, and you think about how quickly technology is moving, that 20 years, like I said, you could get 200 years worth of innovation out of that 20 years. And that's just a random thought that I'm just having right now, a stream of consciousness just talking. So to your point, I wouldn't discount that 20 years, bro.
For $1 trillion, I want to see it,
bro. I mean, and I'm not even talking about just flipping the wealth gap. I'm just talking about the advancement that can be made in that 20 years due to the speed of technology, and it's about creating more awareness for people to understand how these things move, so that you can leverage these types of tools to be able to make those changes. That's what allows for the change to be able to happen. Is that we got way more tools. But it's a double-edged sword because this could also make you lazier
and not focused on the issue.
And you can get distracted a lot easier too. So it's a double-edged sword. But with the way that we moving, bro, that 20 years is it could be a hell of a 20 years. A lot could happen in that time.
I want to see it. I legit want to see it.
Nah, you will. Should Jesus tarry, as the old folks like to say. You gonna see it.
The year of our Lord, 2020. All right. Last question. One other thing that came from your live was the concept of demanding more. That's one thing.
That's what the whole live was
about.
about.
The whole live was about demanding more. And can you kind of go into that concept? Is it demanding more of yourself or value? What is?
Nah,
that
it's everything, bro. It's like just like this ain't the time to chill. This ain't the time to relax. Like a lot of the protests and stuff has simmered down. So still a few like hot spots around the country, obviously. Everybody's still talking about Breonna Taylor. So, but this ain't the time for us to settle in like that. Like, again, like I said, it's the next phase of work. There's a lot of and some of the homies, Marifa and Greg Jackson, Don Thomas, like they were having a Facebook.
I seen it a while
Facebook,
ago.
Facebook conversation this past Thursday. Matter of fact, they do it every Thursday. Okay. Yeah, they do it every Thursday. But they was talking about like where did the revolutionary energy go? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of revolutionary energy in March. And now we in August.
Because of this, that TV.
Well, I wouldn't even say that, bro. I just think, again, like when you study, and I'm learning this just because I'm getting more tapped into like actual organizing circles and people who community organize for real, like people who put together protests and stuff like that. Like I don't consider myself a community organizer. Like there are people who organize as a skill set, like who put together protests and put together bail funds and put together all these things that are active, that visible part of the movement. When you start talking to those folks and understanding their movements or how movements work, it's like that is one phase of it. There's another phase that allows for you to push things forward and make the systemic changes that are necessary. Those flashes in the pan and those protests and the looting, the burning, being in the street, the murals, all of that stuff is supposed to create enough awareness for you to go and do the next phase of work, which is to make those physical changes and do the work of moving into that. And I think that a lot of times that's what our generation hasn't quite picked up on yet. Because all we see, and all we saw from the civil rights movement and from previous things is the marches and protesting. That's what the footage is always ran back. That's the hit. Yeah. But when you understand that, like, no, bruh, MLK was really meeting with the president. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the second phase that a lot of people don't even think about or talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like, Malcolm was doing interviews with like real institutions and colleges, and like was working with would be in neighborhoods, like talking about local politics and who was and wasn't with, you know what I'm saying, the Black movement. Folk, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, same thing with the pen. Like, you have to be politically engaged to be able to move the needle. Yeah. And organized to be able to move the needle. Right. That's the next step of what the work is. The protest is one part of it. But the next step is getting into actually making the change physically, whether that's in your own community or whether that's working with politicians to get it done, or whether that's, voting or any of those things. Like, that's what the next. So when I say demand more, I'm saying I need people to move to the next phase in whatever it looks like for them. I need you to double down on what we was just talking about in March. I need you to demand more of yourself and demand more of the people around you to get to that next phase. I need you to get more information. I need you to understand what's going on. I need you to figure but you got to do that through your sphere and through your lens and through your perspective. But you got to add this into your everyday life. Right. Like I said in the live, only take an hour a day and just like Google something random. Ask a random question to Google and just see what you find. Yeah. Or type a random thing into YouTube and see what you find. You know what I'm saying? I always advocate for people listening to public radio. That's a good way for you to just get information on what's happening. Take an hour and listen to and that's local, state, national, international when it comes to public radio. You know what I'm saying? So like,
because you listen to NPR, right?
I listen to NPR a lot. WFAE 90.7 is our local station here. I listen to NPR not as much as I used to, really, since quarantine has been happening. But when we were like commuting every day, like NPR literally just stayed on in my car. And before I started really doing audiobooks, I didn't listen to nothing really but NPR.
I didn't listen to no radio stations. It was nothing but 90.7. It was just talk radio. And I got into that randomly because I was out one night shooting with my boy Michael Seegers, and it was on in his car. And I was like, they were telling like a very interesting story, and I got caught up in that. And I was like, dang, I should probably start tapping in on this. And the storytelling led me to ended up listening to whatever. And then they got like a show called Charlotte Talks. Yeah. With Mike Collins, and they talk about things that are very relevant to Charlotte. And then they do like a weekly news roundup, and then he talks to the mayor once a month. So you can get all types of information just by listening. You know what I'm saying? While you doing whatever, and you can just be trying to understand and picking up on what's going on. Like I said, a lot of that language and a lot of stuff I get because again I have that experience. But just to be able to be tapped into that and take notes. And just write down like, okay, I don't know what that means. And to be able to research it, your next hour that you spend the next day could be researching what you just Googled the day before. Right. But you got to take that step. And when I'm talking about demanding more of like, you know, the people around you, like for white people, it's demanding more of white people around you. Don't let everybody get comfortable again. Continue to have these conversations. Continue to have these dialogue. For black people, again, it's understanding how the systems we live in, how they moving, getting more information on that, or maybe it's talking to the people next to you, trying to figure out what your homies are talking about, learning more about the election process, getting beyond just thinking about the general election and the president, because you can see the change locally. Right. You know what I'm saying? In your local government, a lot and that's quicker. What I'm trying to get tapped into. You know what I'm saying? A lot quicker, quote unquote, than you will at the federal level. Right. So like these are the people that live and work with you in your community. You can pull up on these niggas, bro. Right. They right here. Right. They regular humans. So like, when I say demand more, I'm talking about that. I'm just talking about take the next step of whatever that is for you, but don't let it stop here. We all have to demand more, and like I said, demand more of me. Just because I do this work for a living don't mean I'm doing enough. Yeah. I watch Netflix like everybody else. I played 3 hours of Warzone, Call of Duty before I came over here today. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm creating time and space for myself to be able to kick it. You know what I'm saying? But I could always be doing more. We all can. Yeah. And it's just about acknowledging that. And then, again, like making those subtle changes to be able to include it. I ain't asking you to change your profession. I ain't asking you to give up what you care about. I'm just saying, again, include this historical context. Right. Include the historical context, think about these things, and think about how you can use what you're passionate about to leverage and create a better space for everybody. Right. But if you black, and even if you're not black, think about black people too. Because at the same time, like, it's been a lot of times where we ain't been thought about. Or we've been thought about and been removed from the conversation on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not the time, especially after this big international movement. Like Tokyo just had their first Black Lives Matter protest. Like, it's barely any black people in Tokyo. That's crazy. But they had a Black Lives Matter protest. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. Like, I didn't know about that. So this is an international movement and moment, and we can't let things just fall back into the regular life, and we can't be distracted by like everything that's going on from a political perspective either, because there's a lot of political games being played right now too. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of things happening in politics. It's just weird. Yeah. So that's what I mean by demand more, bro. It's like, just take the next step. I guess that's another way to rephrase it. It's like, take the next step. Whatever that next step is, getting more information, understanding more history, having more conversation. Just take the next step. Once a week, have a conversation with somebody and just figure out how they feeling about what's happening in the world. Specifically as it relates to, black people and race. Just have that conversation. And not necessarily to just educate, but just to hear, I guess. Yeah, just to exchange perspectives, bro. Like, it's not just to exchange, like, okay, well, what do you think about that? Like, okay, well, where'd you get that information from? Have you thought about, like, what, like, just acknowledging perspectives is one step. Right. Take that step. If you're not doing it now. Right. Like, and eventually that'll help shape your view. But to the tangible portions of it, it's like, just demand more of. I'm demanding more of it. This is not the time. If we want to see change, this ain't the time to sit back. It's the time to lean in. Like, we got this far to the point where there's a splash and a drop in the bucket. But like, okay, how do we maintain that? How do we turn that? How do we leverage that into something through your own personal sphere? It may be on your job. Your manager might just be like, hey, bro, like, are you okay? Or we're thinking about X, Y, and Z. Like, don't shy away from them opportunities if you in corporate America and people like, oh, well, we want to know what's going on. Like, voice your opinion, bro. Right. Like, and that's the thing too. A lot of people, sometimes people be scared of like, oh, this is gonna affect my livelihood, my this, that, and the third. And it's like, bro, if it does, you didn't need to be at that company anyway.
Right, because they don't care.
They don't care about you, bro. And I'm not even going to get on no you got a 9 to 5, you this, that, and like, I'm not even trying to go down that path.
I mean, the reality is most of them companies don't really, but
but at the end of the day, bro, I get it that we live in a capitalistic nation and people got to make a living.
You got to eat.
Yeah, so I'm not mad at that, but I'm saying that like, yo, if you can't overtly express your opinion, that might be something you need to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Or if there hasn't been any space created for you to express your opinion, you might need that might be something where you need to look into
facts.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's all I'm trying to say. And that's just demand more, bro. Like do more, demand more, be more. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like be more. And that be can be existing. You know what I'm saying? Pay attention, create space to hear from yourself and understand yourself more.
Yeah.
To be able to know how to do this. Because that's where it comes down to. It's all interpersonal, bro. The only reason I made it to this point is because I pay attention to myself. I listen. What do I think about that? Why do I think about that? Is there any historical information around that? Mm-hmm. What did my mama teach me about that?
Yeah.
What did my school teach me about that? What did my church teach me about that? What did the homies think about that? Mm-hmm. How do I feel about how the homies, my mama, my church, and how do I feel about that?
Right.
Like it's these layers of having these conversations with yourself or paying attention and creating space for it that can then empower you on how to move. Right. Dang, can I do this on my job? Do I want my job to be aligned with this? Is there something I can do on the weekends? How do I give back?
Like the spark will come eventually, but as long as you're doing that internal work.
Exactly. And that's what all of this and that's what all of it is about, bro. And eventually, if everybody can do that, each one teach one, reach one. Change the world.
So last thing, as we've been talking about it, like really like the entire interview, like everything that's going on in the country, but specifically for you, with everything going on pandemic-wise, racially, what's kind of been like something that you pulled out of these last 5 months that you've kind of learned from or just kind of just like saw? So something that you just pulled out of these last 5 months that's kind of like a teaching moment, a learning moment, a gym, if possible.
Dang, bro, I didn't talk for 2 hours and I ain't gave you no gems.
You gave me gems. You gave me gems. At least I'm not leaving you on any last words. At least I'm not leaving you on that point. Any last words? You about to smoke me something?
Yeah, bro.
At least I
have to call back to the other one. Go watch the other joint. I was like, well, at least you got the shooters in the coop.
But yeah, just like the biggest takeaway in the last 5 months.
Man, the biggest takeaway is just that like. I actually haven't even reflected on that, so I guess that's a really good question, bro.
I love it. That's what I go for every single interview.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I hadn't really, I guess, taken too much time to reflect because I just been working this whole time.
Right.
I guess I really learned what community looks like what it means, and like not in the cliche sense, but also like. I just seen how much of what we live in and exist in and believe in is not real.
Facades.
A lot of what we subscribe to is not real.
Social media.
Everything's like man-made. Like that's one of my favorite quotes is it's from Because the Internet album from Donald Gambino. Childish Gambino or Donald Glover. Childish Gambino in this context. But he enters the track and he says, "Man made the web. You don't need a name." And that is just one of the tenets that has like stuck with me. Is that like, yo, like this is all everything we live and exist in. It's all man made. It's all created. Mm-hmm. Like it's all. At least in terms of the systems, the structures, the businesses, like Not talking about like obviously,
right.
You know, God made us and blah 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 blah
right.
blah. So not from that perspective, but just saying that like the world we exist in, how we believe, money, like all of this stuff is man made, bro. Mm-hmm. And you can literally make what you want. You know what I'm saying? Like Bitcoin was not a thing X number of years ago.
Yeah.
It's now a new form of currency.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
you have the ability to make a currency.
You have because right. who said you can't?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the thing is like if you understand that, you understand that you can really take control of your life, and you can really mold and shape the life that you want. And there's a famous Steve Jobs quote where he talks about that, where he talks about how, like, you know, you go through the process of life and, you know, they kind of tell you like not to bump up against the walls a little bit, and like, you know, you save a little money, you go on some vacation, this, that, and the third. Like the way you move things forward or the way that you change is when you realize that like you can manipulate this. Like this is like life is wet clay. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like life can be molded and shaped, and you're gonna deal with some stuff trying to mold and shape it.
Yeah.
But you're gonna deal with some stuff where you not trying to mold and shape it.
Right.
So you might as well have a purpose behind what you're doing.
Right.
And you might as well have a purpose behind the reason that you're moving. Right. And doing what you're doing, as opposed to just strictly trying to exist in a system just to exist in it just because you're here. Right. Like, why are you here? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And once you figure out why, and you don't even got to fully know. I don't even know fully why I'm here. Yeah. I have a pretty good gauge on it. I feel like I've been able to align a lot of the things that I'm innately passionate about into my job, into the people that I hang around, into, you know, my like I feel like I've been able to mold and shape my life the last 5 or 6 years. Right. Based off of like what my interests are and what my urges are. Mm-hmm. But like, that's the biggest thing is that I've just been seeing, and I already knew that, right? Because I've been living it, but I've seen it even more. You know what I'm saying? Stimulus checks and just, you know, freezing student loan payments. Like, and that was one of the things that I switched in my head when I went to quit my job. Like, yo, as long as nobody's coming trying to take my life over this debt, it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. Are there implications for that? Credit score, this, that, and the third? Yes. Right. But even that, again, is connected to a man-made system. Right. Somebody created that. So I don't, not to say that you don't necessarily, and really you don't necessarily have to subscribe to it. You have to be ready for the implications of not subscribing to it. Right. But to understand that that is something that is man-made and created. And I've just seen a deepening of that point and kind of an expansion of that point during this time in the pandemic, and just the way that we socially interact, the way that we were used to interacting, all of that stuff is being changed and shifted because of coronavirus. Yeah. Like the fact that most conversations most people are having are like, you know, masked up. Like you got to wear a mask in public. Yeah. And granted, it's not something that's like super far-fetched to me, because obviously I seen it in Asia, like in Tokyo and stuff like that. Like they wear masks regularly anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's just new to the U.S. Right. You know what I'm saying? But just understanding that like this thing that we have called life is yours to own, and it's yours to mold and build and shape what you want out of it. Right. Including the systems you exist in, including the spaces you exist in, including the consciousness of the masses. You know what I'm saying? Like this is all, it all can be molded and shaped, and it is often molded and shaped through media, through you know, different narratives, through conversation with each other, through the TV, through comedy, through movies, through music, through.
And that's a big thing, like in terms of like with media. I'm seeing Trevor Noah do his show from home. I'm like, I'm at the crib with it.
Bro, it's the same. It's the same thing. The only difference is the scale. Right. But there ain't no different. Everybody's on Zoom. Yeah. Everybody's on Skype. Everybody. It's the same thing. Right. It's the same thing. Yeah. And that's the thing I be trying to get people to understand too. Like creatives, like, bro, you're using the same tools as people in the industry. Right. If you got Pro Tools on your computer, if you got GarageBand on your computer, if you got Fruity Loops on your computer, FL Studio, whatever it's called, if you got them things, you got the same equipment and resources as people who getting paid X number, blah, 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 blah to do it. Right. So the only difference is what?
Money.
You.
Yeah, and you. Yeah.
Not even money. You. That's the only difference. How much are you willing to invest in that in them tools? How much are you willing to invest in moving forward and learning about it? How much are you willing to really dedicate to moving that thing forward? Yeah. Whatever it is. Because the earth is, the internet already made the earth flat. Yeah. In terms of like networks and being able to get to people and this, that, and the third. Like you can DM your favorite celebrity. Will they respond? No. Or you can DM your favorite business person. Not even to take, because I think we need to kind of kill the notion of celebrities too. I mean, that's a whole nother thing too. Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. Like the internet and technology really made the earth flat in that sense. Like everything is accessible to everybody. Right. You know what I'm saying? So what are you going to do with what you got.
Yeah.
Because tools is the exact same.
Because that's blowing my mind. Because when I see it, I'm like, they doing Ellen from the crib.
The only
they
difference,
doing what's the Sunday's Best from whatever.
Yes.
And putting on the TV. I'm like, so you mean I'm in the crib? And the whole time I'm thinking I need a studio and I need $5,000 lights.
Not now, bro.
And equipment.
Technology.
And the whole time now they're shifting and letting Trevor Noah get his same salary from the crib. So yeah, it's kind of that's like the biggest thing that kind of opened up my eyes.
It's all fake, bro.
Yeah,
it's all fake. It's only existed because somebody said it should exist that way. Now it has to exist another way. There's more options.
Right.
What other things are we not that we haven't dug into yet, or that like a natural disaster or a natural phenomena hasn't caused us to dig into yet? That can be shifted and molded too.
Mm-hmm. To try to get ahead of the wave. Yeah. That's deep.
Create the next wave.
Yeah, that's deep. I appreciate you coming on. See, I didn't end it and telling you any final words, any last words. There's nobody behind you. There's nobody behind you. I appreciate you so much. I definitely look up to you, bro. Like this was like my favorite conversation to date.
Hey man, appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, no problem. If you could shout out your links, everything that you're connected with, Analog Luxury, all that good stuff.
Oh man,
like you got to go back in the recesses.
Yeah, nah. So I'm everywhere on social media. It's Dave Has Wings, DAVE _HAS. Wing has wings, WINGZ. So that's Twitter, that's Instagram. Yeah, bro, that's pretty much it. You can follow Hugh House at It's Hugh House. We ain't talk about Hugh House too much, but you can follow Hugh House, which is like a company I own with a couple partners. It's a creative agency. We also have a nonprofit arm. We just launched a publication called The Block.
That's dope.
Go to itstheblock.com, itstheblock.com. And then you can go to It's Hugh House on all social media, ITS HUEHOUSE. That's the website and the all the social media handles and stuff. You can follow the Whitaker Group stuff. That's APB Store, Social Status, at the Social Status, Mayer USA for Amameyer. And that Let Us Prosper for Prosper. There's way too many affiliations and social media handles. Shout out to my boy Devin Smith. We own Proper Context together. Shout out to Steven from Knife Pasture. Analog Luxury. I got some stuff coming up soon. I got an art show coming up in November that I'm super excited about. My first commercial art show.
So we got pushed back from May, right? It's supposed to be in May, right?
It's supposed to be in May. It got pushed back. So I'm really, I feel like an artist now because of where my medium is and what this new concept I'm about to unveil. So I'm super excited about that. Hopefully Corona can stop being stupid so we can actually get people in the gallery and have a traditional experience. But yeah, bro, it's a lot of stuff going on. Just follow me and then just like start clicking stuff. Eventually, you might find something that you're interested in. You know what I'm saying? It's a world of chaos, a web that only I really understand sometimes. So it's all gravy. But I'm around and open to having conversation and dialogue and being asked questions and all that type of shit. I'm coming here.
Well, I thank you for coming in, bro. I pray you guys were blessed by this whole conversation. Conversation was dope. It's 2 hours long, but you'll be able to sift through it. It's a lot of gems. It may take you 2 days to listen to it, but it's well worth it. Well worth it. So this was another episode of Walk with Drew. My name is Drew Muzon. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram at Drew Muzon, like you saw in the intro. But yeah, until next time, peace out.
No doubt.